Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Joining me today is Pamela Durkin. Pamela has spent over 30 years in the high-end design business, serving both residential and commercial clients. She continues to practice design, and she also teaches other designers how to be magnetic and attract the best clients through her in-demand designer program. We're talking today about networking, ideal clients, and how to make an impression from the beginning. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Pamela, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Me too. I'm excited to talk to you. Before we jump in, I would love for you to share with the listeners a little bit about your story. I'd love to hear how you got into design, what inspired you to go that route. And then let's talk through some of the early challenges you had when you kind of started doing things on your own.
Yeah, that's certainly a loaded question. So and we'll see how much time we have. I'll condense it as much as possible. So I've been in the business for over 30 years. And actually, I was first introduced into design and the field of design when I was in high school. I actually took a class from a wonderful person who actually was an interior designer. It was a home economics class, and she talked about interior design in that class. And the thing that I loved so much about it was that it married both technical and artistic abilities together. And I had never heard of any profession that had done that before. So that really started the wheels turning in terms of what I was thinking about, what I was going to do beyond high school. And then ended up going to college for interior design. And at the time, I was greatly discouraged from doing that from my mother, because she thought it was it was an artsy degree, and she was really worried about the whole starving artist syndrome. And as you know, it is a challenge in this industry. And once I got out of college, I ended up starting my work in commercial design. It was something that I really wanted to do first. I wanted to be a commercial designer. So I did start doing commercial design and eventually got to the point where I wanted to go on my own. And when I went on my own, I decided to do a blend of commercial and residential design. But what the background in commercial gave me, which I use to this day, is the skills of organization and processes on how a project runs. And I brought all that to my residential practice. And that has really made a huge difference in how I present my business and then also how I run my business. So that's kind of the shortened version of how I got to where I am today. And I still do a blend of residential and commercial design.
You know, I find it interesting that in a home ec class, you were able to be introduced to interior design, because I've been in the workforce, over 30 years as well, plus college and everything else. I don't think I ever even knew interior design was a thing until maybe in the 90s. Late 90s. And I did my, high school, college experience and early working experience in the 80s. I just didn't even really know it was a thing. I don't think I ever stopped. Number one, I was from a very small town, a very rural town, very blue collar town. And so we didn't really have, if we had interior designers, I never met one. I never knew of one. We didn't really even have like these home living stores that you see. We had a furniture store, and that was where you bought things. I don't know that I ever considered how those things got done or who did them. It just wasn't even, I know I loved beautiful things. I know I loved decorating. I knew I loved magazines, but I never saw it as even an opportunity for a job or a career. And so I think that is a huge blessing that you had. Because if I had had that early on, I do believe that I would have gone in a completely different route from the way that I went. I think that it would have definitely been on my short list. I may have gotten pushback from others as well back then, but I just think that's really a cool opportunity that you had early on to see it as something that could create a livelihood and meet a need. I love how you also mentioned about the technical and the creative. And I think that's where my brain runs. It's right down that middle of left brain, right brain. And I've shared before, that whole left brain is logic and right brain is creative. And I would say that if mine had to err on one side or the other, mine would err on logic. So I kind of do the whole, let's get the process, let's have the logic, let's do the math, let's do framework, and then I can move and like shift into creative, where some people are so creative that then they have to shift. But I think it's a really nice thing that the commercial and the residential kind of hits all of those. You can ping pong between them and feed all the different parts of, what excites you.
Yeah. And I was just, you're the second or third person that has told me about the home economics and having someone with a design background, how unusual that is. And honestly, I'd never thought about it because it was just the way it was. I didn't grow up in a big town either, but you're right. I was so lucky to have that opportunity at that time when I was getting to that point where I was going to be going to college. That really helped me decide where I was going to go. Not many people know what they want to do when they go into college. And because I knew, I think that's what kind of scared my family, because it was a new profession and, hadn't been widely talked about. So I was definitely lucky with that.
So how long, Pamela, were you in commercial before you decided to kind of step out on your own? Do you have an idea?
I think it was about 7 years. I did commercial design. I actually worked at a few commercial furniture dealerships, and we worked on projects in, I lived in an area, I'm originally from New Jersey. I'm in Florida now, but when I was in New Jersey, we lived in an area that had a lot of pharmaceutical companies. And so a lot of the business was pharma related. And we used to do a lot of reconfigurations, restacks, and huge moves. We were doing 1,000-person moves and things like that. So lots of parts and pieces. And then I also had the joy of working in New York City. And I say that tongue in cheek because I grew up on a farm. So going to New York City to be at a job site at 8 a.m. when I lived 2 hours away was not so glamorous. And it was a little overwhelming for me. So, but I did get to do a lot of work in New York City and kind of get a chance to see the behind the scenes of the glamour of what, when somebody says, I'm a designer in New York City, and no offense to anyone who does design in New York City, but I got to see firsthand what that would look like if I were to do that. And it just wasn't for me. So I was lucky enough, again, to your point, to have that experience going, not for me. And then from there, I actually decided to go on my own because I had recently had a baby. And after having my first child, went back to work for about a year. And to be honest with you, it was heart-wrenching and exhausting and unfulfilling to the 100th degree. And that was the moment that I decided, something here's got to change, and I've got to go out on my own.
So when you started on your own, and let me go back before we go that route. I want to just make a comment. I do think it is important. Sometimes we don't know what we like and what we want to do until we give it a try. Yeah. Again, working in New York City can sound glamorous until you think about where you're going to park, how you're going to get there, how long is it going to take you to get in, what does traffic look like? I got to get up at 3 a.m. to make it 8 a.m. with a 2-hour drive. When you start counting the cost of all of it, it maybe isn't as glamorous for some as others. Those that live in the heart of the city and they're doing design 2 blocks away, they're going to have a completely different experience than you had, right?
Right.
So I do think it's super important for us to realize, to really find like the part of our career that makes our heart sing. We have to try multiple things, and that's totally okay. Like commercial versus residential. I know some designers would be like, don't ever make me do commercial. Others are like, I've been in commercial and then I switched, or, you just see it from all different viewpoints. So I love the idea of really testing it out, trying and seeing. That's why a lot of the new designers, when they're coming up, they're, what should I do? And I'm like, try multiple things, because you may find something that you love that somebody else doesn't. I have designers now that I work with that they prefer the building of the business to the design. I have others that are like, let somebody else be an integrator so that I can just design. So it varies all over the place. We just kind of have to figure it out and find our way.
I agree. And to your point, I think that we can customize our own businesses so that they, even if we're in residential or we're in commercial, I think we can customize it so much further than that, even removing things that either we're not good at and have someone else help us with, or removing them altogether. I know many designers right now are getting rid of procurement and changing the way and adapting their business, because there's so much stress around that. And yes, you do make money, but at what cost? And with an extended time frame in a project that now goes, maybe twice as long or even longer than it did before, how much money are you really making on that? And what kind of emotional toll is it taking on you? And so I always encourage people to even look at what they would term a traditional design business, or what a real designer does, and say, you know what, you're in your own business. You went in your own business for a reason, and you certainly can customize it to fit how, you run your life and your zone of genius, and also what works for you and what's profitable.
For sure. So I agree with you, because one of the things I always say is when I'm coaching people, and I know you work with other designers as well, we're not creating cookie cutter businesses. The goal here is for each person to understand how they're made, what their strengths are, their values, what they love to do, what they enjoy doing, what their team is specialized in, and then be able to take that and serve their clients, which then ultimately serves them, right? I hate that idea of thinking that you have to do something to be a designer, or this is the right way or wrong way. I'm like, no. Is the client happy and satisfied? Are you happy and satisfied? Is it fair and reasonable for the client? Is it fair and reasonable for the sustainability of your company? Then is it moral? Then keep doing it, right? Who cares? I've had some designers that have gone through, to your point about the procurement and everything, just based on their family, their life, and what they could do. They are doing more of, I'm going to come in and design for you, and I'm going to give you a plan and let you do it. And I'm going to walk on and go design the next thing. They're doing more of a completely service-based model.
Right.
And for them, it's working out, it's stress reduction. Another designer would look at that model and they may say, oh my gosh, I can't imagine giving up that control. I want to control it all, and this is the way I want to do it. Totally cool, totally fine. That company is going to be set up for that. They're willing to do what they need to do to make that happen. Somebody else is not. So I know, my business has certainly shifted over the years, and I assume most people's are going to shift, because it is rare that you land 100% on the perfect job, the perfect client, the perfect ideal of everything the first time you go out the door to try it.
Yes. And we all started our businesses for it to be different. So you don't want to trade one job for another, right? One awful job for another awful job, just because you own it. So I think you can definitely design your own business, exactly what you said, and to really look at what works for you and what's profitable for your business, and then customize it from there.
When you started on your own after those 7 years and having that first child, what were some of the challenges that you ran into? We all run into, no matter how much we know, we run into something, right? I know you said you brought a lot of the process that you had been working in a commercial, and that kind of informed the way that you worked in residential. But what were some of the challenges that you had early on?
Of course, the biggest challenge is, where am I going to get business from? And to just step back for a little bit, when I started my business, it was not planned. So when I was working for another company, it got to the point in what was happening day to day with me and my business. And this was also around the time of 9/11. So there was a lot of stress, and I was working in New York City and on the outskirts of New York City. So certainly very emotionally affected by what was happening there as well. So when I went back to work, it kind of got worse and worse and worse. I mean, it just was not a good, it wasn't a good situation. So when I started my business, it actually was, I quit and now what do I do type situation. So I was a bit unprepared. I'm not sure I would recommend that to anyone listening. Definitely have a plan, a little more of a plan than I did. So I think the stressor really was, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah. Mine started that way. My first one started that way. I had left Dun and Bradstreet and I came home. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and my doorbell rang, and my bunk of neighborhood friends, 2 women were standing there with a bolt of fabric. One had a bolt of fabric, the other was with her. And they're like, "We love everything you've done in your house. I've got this fabric. Will you make me a window treatment?" And I was like, okay. So, again, I started without a plan. I didn't have everything. I didn't have my feet up under me. I had just done the work, and they came in and saw it and said, "I'll pay you to do that for me." And that was in 2000. And so at that point I was like, okay, I guess here we go.
Yes. And this is when I guess, when your back's up against the wall, procrastination is no longer an option, right? So there was a lot of, basically calling everyone I knew to get anything, residential, commercial, I didn't care what it was, to just get the ball whirling, get the word out. And, that was long before social media or any of that. So it was phone calls. You were dialing for dollars basically, which was super uncomfortable because I am a true introvert. I'm a selective extrovert where I can kind of turn it on, but generally I'm not very outgoing when it comes to that stuff. And it's super uncomfortable for me because I just doesn't feel like we talked about, in alignment. And that really is the basis for a lot of my coaching, is helping people with getting clients, the pre-sale process. It's before you get the project, and how you can do that in a very comfortable, non-sleazy way. So that all stems really from my own experience of, calling someone up and saying, "Do you have any work for me?" Which nobody, by the way, don't recommend that either. That's not the way to do it. So, I just was getting on the phone and talking to everybody I could think of.
I remember those days as well, because my business was starting. We were starting to get a little bit of internet activity in the early 2000s, but it wasn't a big deal. I did find some things out there, but it was still relatively new. And I just remember walking around with business cards. I had to make sure I had business cards everywhere. And you were constantly having to talk about what you do and tell people, because there was no other way to do it. It was get in the phone book, right? Do you remember the phone book ads?
Or the Rolodex? Look it up, people.
Rolodex, get in the phone book ads. I can remember going places, because at that point I was doing custom window treatments. I can remember going places where there was fabric just to hang out so that I could have a conversation with some rando who walked in who was looking at fabric. I mean, it was definitely boots on the ground, or marketing and who and having other people share. It was that word of mouth buzz. It was the whole thing. It certainly wasn't like having an online store / website or presence that somebody could come in and find and start making decisions. But what's so interesting? I did learn a lot during that time frame. Same thing you said. I learned how to do things in a very different way. And I think a lot of people think that I'm very much an extrovert. I would say I'm maybe an extroverted introvert, but I definitely, I love people and I can be around people, but I can't do it all the time. I have to pull back and pull away. I hate calling and asking for things. If people ask me, I'm going to usually say, within reason, I would say yes. But like, I can remember even when my kids were in band and Boy Scouts, we would have to go around the local company. I was just like, "Can I just give you a check? Please don't make us go. Please don't make me go do it." I hate it. I hate asking for things, which is actually a very big limiter when you're trying to connect, because you should be able to do that. But I struggle with it because I would rather just stroke a check or just say yes, but I'm not bothered when people ask me. So I don't know why I feel like, I don't know. I guess I feel like I'm imposing. So I hate doing
Yeah.
it.
I think it probably has to do something with either your upbringing or your personality would be my
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
I just read a book. Have you read this book? The book called The Big Leap. Have you read that
I
book?
have not.
So that book, I just finished that book and it's really quite enlightening. And a lot of it talks about the way that we react to things now or as adults really stems back to something that's happened in our past, probably our childhood, and in a way that we protected ourselves in some childhood situation. And so it was like there was a lot of aha moments going on in that book. So I suggest you
I may
maybe
have
take
to
a
go
look at
grab that. Well, I do know that I grew up in an area where people took care of themselves. You did your own thing. You didn't
independent.
ask for help, very
Yep.
independent. So I don't disagree that that was probably part of it. It wasn't very much connected. But again, the lessons we learned, whatever we learned to work through to get over to move forward. Now I actually love connecting. I just connect in a way that's comfortable for me. Instead of, again, you're supposed to, it's like, okay, I understand connection's important. How do I connect in a way that feels authentic and that feels in alignment and doesn't feel sleazy? And I do think that's important. So, quick question for you, real quick. On the very, very beginning, where you were begging and borrowing and calling and doing all the things to get your business kicked off really well, were you wildly profitable at the very, very beginning?
Oh God, no.
Right.
No, I was just happy to, well, I mean, I also was juggling, a baby. I did have, the baby was in daycare at the time, but, I was still dealing with that situation. But yeah, absolutely not. Because I was just so happy to get work. I was doing anything I could and it didn't matter. Getting paid was almost the lowest item on the list, right? It was just feeling like I had worth because someone was willing to hire me, regardless of how much that was. And so, yeah, I think that was just getting the work was the biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
I was proud for that. It didn't matter if I was getting paid much.
It becomes that initial payoff, right? It becomes the initial, it's like that is the payment. I always go back to the Sally Fields where she stands up at the Academy Awards and she's like, you like me, you really like me. That was how she felt worthwhile and felt validated, if you will, in the body of work that she produced. All right. So you learned through all of that how to be profitable.
Yes.
And you learned how to make decisions for your business that made it sustainable, but that also still supported your client. And then at some point in your journey, you picked up and moved to Florida.
I did.
Which means that you probably had to
I
start
built a
all
business
over
again.
Yep. All right. So, and I asked that way because my guess is when you built the second time in Florida, you brought all the lessons learned with you into your new build. Is that the case?
Yeah, I definitely, of course, we talked about this prior to recording, is that the lessons learned the hard way are the ones that stick with us the most. Because we've been wounded by those and we vow never to do them again. So when we moved to Florida, at that point I had two babies, and I did have another newborn when we decided to move. Just really was trying to figure out, do I want to work for somebody? Do I want to continue on my own? And ultimately decided to just go ahead and stay on my own, and really started to get involved with organizations in the area. So the builder organization, of course, the design organization, very active, or have been very active for many years, in ASID. So started with those two organizations to really dive into the deep end of at least what was happening in the industry in this area. And that made a huge difference, because while getting clients one-on-one is how a lot of people do it, either through referrals or client referrals, I think that it's so much better if you can make one great builder contact or one great realtor contact or one great building manager contact. They can give you 5 referrals a year or 10 referrals a year. So putting your efforts into that relationship has so much better ROI. So that's how I worked the beginning of my business here in Florida.
Even as an introvert.
Yeah. You got to do what you got to do, you know.
Yeah.
You got bills to pay. You got to do what you got to do. So yeah,
But you know what? To your point, even as an introvert, you're putting your energies into meeting less people that way because they can then
efficient,
introduce
so
you.
efficient.
It's efficient. That's right. You're not wasting time.
And also too, and just having that commercial background, I used to do a lot of presentations. So when I got out of school, I was young and I was doing lots of presentations those first couple of years. And that was really hard for me in the beginning. I would palpitate and be really nervous and kind of stumble over my words. But thank goodness for that, because I got very confident in my presentation skills. And so I was able to put on that persona, like presentation persona, when I went to these networking events, because I was like, it's just like presenting a project, right? And so that really helped me. So that skill is so very important to talking to people, and then also learning how to connect with people quickly instead of talking about your company, but making more of a personal connection. And that's something I've even learned to hone a little better in the last couple of years, is how do we connect personally? Because I'm sure you talk about this, that people do business with people. Yeah, everyone's going to think that if they're interviewing 3 designers, that the skill set's relatively equivalent. So now what is it coming down to? Maybe it's coming down to aesthetics, but it's also coming down to personality.
Absolutely. So when you moved to Florida, did you have to kind of, I'm assuming you had to at least tweak or redefine in some way who your ideal client was, because they may not have been the exact same project or style or person. I mean, I'm certainly characteristics like kind, willing to pay, those translate. But there is, when we are looking at, if you will, the avatar, it could certainly shift based on moving into, the Florida market versus a New York City market.
Yeah, it was totally different because, well, down here in where I'm in Naples, much more. I lived in an affluent area up north, but Naples is much more affluent. So there was that level change of something that I was like, whoa, that was intimidating. The other thing is that we have, at that time when I first got here, very seasonal. It's still seasonal here, but it's changing a little bit, but so very seasonal residents. So your window of when people were here and maybe interviewing for projects was, it wasn't all year. It was certain times, only so many months out of the year, and usually right before they were leaving to go back up north. So I had to really learn what was happening in this location, in this geography, and how to handle the fact that somebody wasn't going to be here and how we were going to communicate while they weren't here and keep everything moving. So that was a very different way to learn and do business than I had ever done before.
Yeah. And I know one of the topics that you like to talk about in a multitude of ways is about really creating that relationship or that connection prior to the sale, really being able, and I can imagine that if you've got a lot of second and third home clients, right? You're having to do some of that work. They're finding you, meeting you, they're in, they're out. You're having to be able to find a way to have an attractive style, presence, personality, and to do it rather quickly, because they're making decisions and then they're kind of, in or out the door. So talk to me a little bit about how you did that and what made you focus in on that. Because I'm certain that you, at some point, it must have been, as we would love to talk about, more profitable to focus on that, the energy on building a relationship. But what led you down that path?
The path to going after more affluent clients?
No, just really, well, I think that's probably part and parcel to where you live as well, but also that building of that relationship first, like that really drawing them to you and really doing the due diligence to say, I mean, just because somebody's affluent, I always used to say, just because they have breath in a checkbook doesn't mean I need to work with them, right? They still might not be my person. And so, I mean, I tell people when they call me all the time, I don't work with everybody that calls me. I don't expect to. I really feel like I'm interviewing them and they're interviewing me. And if we jive and if we're on the same journey and the same path, and if we're meant to work together, we're both going to know it. There's an attraction that happens. There's a magnetism. There's something that says, you're my person for this next amount of time. And I know that you do a lot of work in that area to make sure that that's who you're working with.
Right. So there's a couple of parts to that. The key is your referring relationships are key. If you can develop those really well, they know the type of client you're looking for. And so that helps. So that's sort of like the first barometer where they're going to send clients your way that they know you're looking for. And that's a simple question of, who's your sweet spot client? And you can ask this of your vendors as well and let them tell you really the type of projects they want to work on. I also am very clear on that so I do an initial call with people. I use a service called Calendly, and I think we were using that to get us set up, where somebody can make that appointment super efficient ahead of time. So, there may be an initial contact, but then they can make like a quick 15-minute call with me. And we just talk a little bit about the project. I never run out and look at projects. I say, I think we should talk for a little bit. I want to hear what they say, what their words are. Because, if they say in there, well, this is the fourth designer, we've gone through 4 designers. There's no point in me going out.
Right,
There's flags and bells and all whistles going off. I also do tell people I have learned this works for me. It's very efficient to work in a certain style. So my style is super clean. That's where my brain's at. That's where I do my best work. And so I do ask people to explain to me what their style is and what that is. And I know that has some gray areas to it, and we mitigate that later on, but I need to know that they're going to be within the wheelhouse that I've already set my parameter for that. And then, I kind of listen to some of the words that they say, and if they're talking about family and how important their home is, or the fact that they have, if they're like a CEO or a high rank, like a professional, those are the best ones for me because they make decisions quick. They understand that they need to be hiring someone who's a expert in their own field and will put trust in that person. So we kind of talk about all those things. And then if we decide to make an appointment to move forward, and I tell them exactly what you say, is that this is a process that we have to have good rapport. So it has to be good for you, but it has to be good for me too, because I will do my best work for you if I feel that we have a relationship where we can discuss openly things that we like, things that we don't like, and where the whole project's going to move forward. So that's super important to me as well. And I will turn down projects if I don't think they're a good fit. So I do, in the beginning of that call, say, listen, this is as much of an interview for me as for you. And if I don't think it's a good fit, I'll just let you know. And I can either give you the name of somebody, or you can go on to the next person on the list. If we decide to have a meeting, I go ahead and ahead of the meeting actually send them a shock and awe box. And that is a box that I send out, which has a bunch of items in it. But this, to your point, really kind of cements that relationship ahead of the process. So in the shock and awe box, I'll put things like, some information about me. I do a monthly newsletter, so I'll put the copies of those in there. And that just gives them an opportunity to get to know me without me being in front of them. Just get to know what I think is important as a designer, what my voice is, how I interact in some ways. Because I'm real chill. Even though I'm from New Jersey, I'm real chill. And I feel like any problem can be fixed if we just put a little time and effort to it. So I'm not one of those people that's going to freak out when something goes wrong. So I want them to kind of get that sense. And then I also create a lot of boundaries in that packet, which is going to talk about, I do frequently asked questions, things that come up all the time, like what's the next step, or what's the process, or what if I find something, I'm out and about and I find something, what should I do? Or what happens when me and my spouse don't agree on something you've presented? And I answer those questions. So much more comfortable and easy to do it when you've put some thought into how you want to, craft that answer as opposed to doing it in front of somebody. I talk about when I take meetings and why I do it this way. And then, of course, I include a couple little gifts in there for them. And I just write a little note and say, listen, I'm giving you a lot of information to digest prior to our meeting. Here's a snack and a drink that you can have on me. Just enjoy it and just, go through the information. And the reason I do that is because when I have that meeting with them, there's two things. One, they feel like they've already gotten to know me. And if they didn't like something they've seen, they will cancel the meeting. So that's good for everybody, right? And then the other thing is they've had a chance to look through all this information where I've told them how these things are going to work and how we're going to move forward. And they're only going to bring up the items that are of concern to them. So I'm not giving them a bunch of information that they have to try to digest while we're in front of each other, but they can go through that information at leisure and then say, hey, I had a question about this, or how would this work? And so the conversation becomes much stronger because we're really talking, you're almost going to the next level in the very first meeting.
Very quickly. It's interesting. We all give, well, I won't say we all, many of us give potential clients information prior to working with us so that they're kind of, for lack of a better term, indoctrinated into what we do and how we do it and into our process. But I do really, and I know that we all have been pushed to paperless society, but there is something about getting a physical reminder piece of paper, something that's beautifully crafted that you can touch, that you can feel. It makes you feel like I get, thank you notes and email all the time. Huge fan of that. Like, send me all your thank you notes. I'll take them. But when I get one written in the mail, I have a box. I save them. I mean, something about them feels different. It also feels too, Pamela, that you have really already started investing in that relationship with them, because you just wouldn't spend the money to put a box together, even if you have them done in bulk. You still wouldn't spend the money and the time and the effort and the energy to go to the post office or to get postage put on a box to mail it to them and do all the things if you weren't somewhat willing to start down the road of investing in their project by at least being open to that. And I love how they have an opportunity to digest it before they talk to you, because it does to me. All right. So a couple of things. Number one, I used to always say, if you don't do a 10 or 15 minute call with somebody, if you just take every call and immediately go to their house, I don't see that as profitable for a couple of reasons. One, what if you get to their home and then you absolutely hate the project? You can't stand them. They can't stand you. You just wasted multiple hours and their time going. Like, why would I do that? Number two, you're planning on things. You don't even have all the right tools with you sometimes when you go there, if you didn't have a conversation prior to know what you're walking into. And so just knowing and being able to decide quickly. I also love how your shock and awe box, or even the process that you go through, and I do this as well. I love that it allows people to self-edit, to immediately say, oh, I need to take a step back. Maybe this isn't for me, or that's not my style, or her timeline doesn't fit my timeline, or I need a process that is more accommodating here than there. And there's no embarrassment. It's just you take a step back, right? So much better than having to sit on a phone call with somebody or even in a meeting face to face, realizing that that's not going to work. That just creates kind of shame and frustration. And then I don't know about you, but when I go to in the past and even now on the phone, when I go into that call, I'm excited, and I'm not looking for ways we can't work together. I'm looking for ways that we can work together. And so if I come into that conversation with preparation and with excitement that we're going to work together, and then we can't, I feel let down too. Even on this side, it's not just the client feeling or potential client feeling that disappointment, but I feel that level of disappointment. And I'd like to protect myself not to have a day of disappointments. I mean, it wastes time when that time could be spent on another project. It could be spent doing work that mattered in a deeper form. It could be spent building another opportunity for communication with a better client or a better fit of a client. And so I really like that idea. That's cool. And I bet you, what do you say? Well, let me ask this. What made you decide to go this route versus doing the dribble of information electronically?
Well, several years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I discovered a business coach that teaches magnetic marketing. And this is one of the techniques that he teaches. And what I love, and I adapted it for my business, what I love is that you're showing the client how they're going to be treated before they hire you. And that's a hard thing to do. And how do you do that? And this is such an easy way to say, look how good I'm going to take care of you. Look how good I'm taking care of you now. And we're not even, you haven't even hired me yet.
That's right.
And especially for a luxury service. And, this technique, generally this is like a $35 investment. I mean, those jobs have been $250,000 and up, so this is well worth the time and effort to do.
It's true. We spend so much time caring for and preparing for our clients when they've already signed. But when we show them some of that love prior to, that actually makes the sign so much.
They're more connected to you right away.
Immediately.
And yes. And also too, the couple of items that I put in that box are not necessarily business related. I want them to get to know me. And again, that's all coming back to getting to know me as a person.
I love that. What would you say has been the number one key to your current success?
Really getting focused on the type of client that I want to work with, and then figuring out ways to do that the most efficient way possible. And that comes down to, what we talked about before is really partnering up with vendors, with builders, with realtors, and helping each other out. Many of us are in small businesses of 5 or less generally. And so, and we're doing business with businesses that are generally small businesses. So if we band together, we can really extend our reach, and that really helps us create strategic partnerships that can really go far. And so that's where I think, that's where I've had that efficiency, where I've got such great referring partners and we've worked together so well that, when you get an opportunity, your close rate's really, really high because, first of all, you've been recommended. So that's already pushing the sales process down. You've done the shock and awe box. You get to meet them. I mean, you're closing much more business and you're choosing. And I think that part of feeling in control, that you can turn something down if you need to because it's not a good fit, is very empowering. And then feeling confident that something else is going to come in its place and that you're not going to be left destitute. I mean, of course, you always have that little item in the back of their mind, but there's ways to mitigate that. And so I think that's super important.
Yeah, what's so cool is when you build these partnerships with people and other businesses that are very like-minded, right? They are in alignment with you. It's almost like it gives them the freedom as well to say yes to a project because they know that not that you are required to do any project that anybody refers to you, but they know that this is also a project that could be in your sweet spot. So they have like this freedom to maybe say yes because they know that you're probably going to say yes. I think there's also that transfer of trust, and we just cannot undermine the importance of that. When this person transfers that trust to you, you're right. It's already moved from that know, like, trust. Like they've sped up that process in such a way that the person's like, oh my gosh, well, you've been recommended as, the best in this, or the right person for this, or the great fit for that. That's already playing in their mind when they come in. So now, hopefully, if they are the right fit, they're looking for ways to also say yes.
Yes.
As quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Versus, that's let me say this, and you probably have seen this play out as well. When I'm right now looking to form a few other partnerships to support my clients and other people, just to be able to refer like, oh yeah, you can go here for that. And you can go here for that. And I'm calling these people. I'm literally reaching out to them and going, hey, looking for a bookkeeper that does this. if you do this, I got a list of clients I'd love to send you. Can we have a conversation and talk? It's been really interesting to see the responses back from that.
They're shocked that someone wants to help them.
Yeah, they're shocked that somebody wants to help them, or like there is one particular one that I reached out to that we have some level of overlap in what we do, but I'm not a bookkeeper or accountant. So mine's more of high level strategy. And then I hand it off to the other experts in those areas.
Right.
And that person is so, I'm going to say short-sighted as nicely as I can, that because we offer anything that overlaps, I'm their number one competitor. And I'm like, I want to go, look, sweet girl, I can send you so much work.
Business, yeah.
Right? That who cares if we overlap 10% of what we do? 90% of what you do is no overlap with me. Let me send. Like you and I overlap on even some of the ideas that, which to me just means we're both doing really well because we
that means we're
the
both
same
so
thing.
Smart.
We're both smart, but we're doing things differently. We still have other aspects of what we do that is so different. You know what I mean?
Teaching style and everything, right?
Everything,
You know,
depth, breadth, all of it.
Right.
It's just different, and so I don't have a problem with that. I'm okay with that, and so I do think it's important though to find those people that want to be supported, that want to be part of a network, that want to refer you. And as much as you're trying to refer them, you know, as much as possible. When you're way downstream, that's hard to refer way upstream. But just have that idea that, like you said, banding together, we can help each other, we can support each other. But one of the biggest questions is, tell me who your ideal client is. Because if you can tell me, I ask that people all the time, tell me who you love to serve. Tell me where it feels like you're gifting them instead of having to work with and for them. Because if I see and know those people, I will send them to you. The same way that you would tell somebody, I'm not the designer for you, or your project's not within my wheelhouse, or whatever it is. Here are some other ones that you can check out. I do the same thing. I told somebody the other day, I'm not the coach for you right now. I think this is what you need. This is the coach I think you should go, talk to and create a conversation with to see if that's a fit. Go there and then come back here later. But we're not in the right spot to work together right now.
Right.
And being okay with that.
Yeah, you have to be. I mean, I think that coaching is just like design. You're getting into a relationship that's very personal, and I think there has to be good synergies there. And I think knowing your network and building your network with like-minded people, or even people that are at a point a little above you so that it pushes you to get to that next level, is so important in terms of leveling up your entire business.
Right. I love having conversations with even some of the coaches that I would say are a couple of steps behind me, because there are people that come to me that aren't ready, that are really where they are. And that's a good point, a good place to be as well. So kind of having that network of a couple of people that are a few steps behind that you're helping pull up,
right,
and those ahead that are pulling you up.
Yeah.
I think that's how we all work together. So Pamela, one of the things I know that you've mentioned, you talk about too, is ROI and profitability. What are some of your favorite metrics to look at and review with regard to profitability in any type of form of profitability? Not even just money, right?
Yeah. I mean, to me, time is such a huge resource that is limited, and we tend to overextend ourselves. And I know that that's super important to me, because I know also when I get overly stressed, I actually stop doing anything, because I'm sort of frozen in time. And so I'm very conscious of how I spend my time, and then also know that I need breaks when I'm doing things or switching tasks. So I do use time blocking a lot. And I've also learned that during the day, there's only a few big things that I can accomplish every day. I used to think it was much more, And then I started to really look at that and I was like, wow, you don't want to do 10 things terribly, and I'd rather do 2 things really good. And so, I've gotten really smart about what I work on, why I'm working on it, because I think that how time and profit work together and how you move your business forward is so important on what you're spending your time on.
Oh, I totally agree. Jumping up and down.
Woohoo!
Yeah, right. Because time is definitely a currency, and it's not one that we get back. We do get our money back, but we don't get our time back. Once it's spent, it's spent. And so being very intentional with how we spend it, knowing that we're doing the highest level work that we need to do, and learning to hand off those other tasks, and sometimes I'm an achiever. So I like that whole task list, check it off. Kelsey and my other team members, they laugh because we work in a sauna and I love to watch the little unicorn fly across. So I just about put tasks on there so I can check them off, so I can see her fly across my
dopamine
screen.
Hit with the
that's it. Woo! She even says to me sometimes, Michele, I'm going to leave all my stuff unchecked so you can go check them off so you can see the unicorn fly, because she knows I need that in my day. However, sometimes I set up a time to just do those little, bang, 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 task after task. But I cannot do that all day, every day. I just can't. I've got a couple of really big things. That's why I time block as well. I talked about that, a couple of years ago on Luann Nagara's podcast. And one of the things I do is Tuesdays are all of my discovery calls. So all new clients that want to work with me, we talk on Tuesdays. Thursdays, I batch all of my podcast so that I can stay in that zone all day long of, I got to do intros, I got to do outros, I got to do this, I got to do that. I can just do it, and I'm not jumping back and forth. My coaching calls are Mondays and Wednesdays. Friday is business development. And I just have it blocked out in a certain way. And over the years, it shifted and changed based on what I needed to do and how I needed to do it. But I agree with you, being very intentional on how we spend our time, and then tracking our time. I think that's one of the things that's eye-opening when you actually track your time, and we think that, oh my gosh, that took me 6 hours. Well, 4 hours was daydreaming about something else, and 2 hours
stressing
about it, or, getting twisted up about it when I could have done it in 2 hours if I'd taken all those other things off my list. So I do think that is a huge, I agree. I think that is actually, there are 2 areas that I see most companies where they're not making money, and it's they're not accounting for their time properly, and they're not marking up product properly. And if they would do those 2 things within their company, a lot of times it's not about working more to make more. It's about capturing the value of the work they've already done.
Yes. And turn off the phones.
Yes.
Set a timer and 30 minutes of quiet time. You'll see how much you can get done in 30 minutes. If you're not looking at email, hearing the dings, whatever's coming in to kind of break our concentration. And if we just, even 30 minutes is a huge amount of time when you get yourself trained to do it.
Yeah. I usually turn off email. I don't have any notifications anywhere anymore. I turn my phone over, and I don't even have it buzz. So it's
I'm on silent all the time.
Silent. Even I remember when I first got my iWatch, I was sitting there and I'd have everything turned off, and all of a sudden my arm's buzzing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it has notifications too. I got to go turn that off, because otherwise I would have it turned off everywhere else, but my arm's over here vibrating and distracting me. So it really is. It's like Pavlov's dog. I mean, we're dinging all over the place these days.
No wonder we have attention deficiencies. But even with my watch as well, the first thing I did was disconnect that from my phone. All I want to know is how many steps I've done and what my heart rate is. I do not need another place for someone to try to get in touch with me.
Yeah, me either.
That got disconnected day one.
I agree. Well, Pamela, as we're wrapping up, tell everybody about your book, because you have written a book, and I want to make sure that we give you a huge plug for that, and then tell them where they can find you.
Awesome. So I have a book called Elevate. It's the ultimate guide to take your business from the ground floor to the penthouse. And it just talks about the things I've learned in my business, some of the mistakes I've made, some of the shiny objects that have taken me off my path. And then some of the ways that I've become more efficient in my business. So certainly welcome to pick that up. That's available either on Amazon or you can download it. I can certainly provide the download link if you'd like. And I am very active on social media. So if you need to find me, you can certainly find me on Instagram at Pamela Durkin. My website's pamela-durkin.com. And you'll be able to find me there. I'm usually on Instagram quite a bit. So
awesome. Well, we'll put those in the show notes. And I do just want to make a comment about your book. What I loved about it was it wasn't just here's what you do. You have areas for self-reflection, and you have areas that are almost workbook style in there.
Yeah, and right in that book.
Right in the book. Yeah. And I'm big. I usually have flags in all my books and highlighting in my book, and I write in the book. But it was just a nice change to see not only here's what you do, but here and now take some time and think through that. And I love the prompts. So I just wanted to give you a kudos on that.
You wanted something that's going to make your life better, right?
Yeah. And you have it all in one place. Here's what I learned. Here's what I chose to do.
Right.
Moving on. Right.
And it's easy. You can read it pretty quickly. It's not one of those long ones too.
Exactly. Well, Pam, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate your knowledge and your sharing. And it's always fun to find somebody to talk to who we are kind of on some of the same path. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was an awesome time to be here with you.
Have a good day.
All right. You too.
Thank you, Pamela, for joining today. Networking with others who have businesses that align with ours and provide adjunct services can really be a fast track to client leads. It starts honestly with knowing who we are and what we want. If you're a high 6-figure or 7-figure business looking for a holistic approach to scaling your business further and you want help to do it, apply for a discovery call at scarletthreadconsulting.com. Let's plan to be profitable, because profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business minded.